Two amazing sets so far been played today over in North America. Two more still to come with how things have looked so far. Been very interesting. Eager started things off today with a 2-0. We've still got two more sets to bring you though, and these are the two. It's going to be Flashpoint versus eUnited, I should say, and then LG versus Memory of Gabe to round things off today, Tully. Two spicy sets still left.
I'm really looking forward to this set specifically because these two captains, Shadowq versus PainDeViande, this should be an interesting battle between the supports.
Well, it should be for Flashpoint versus eUnited. You can see their standings there. eUnited in the top 4 right now after today's play. Can close the gap on Luminosity if they find the 3 points before Luminosity later on will take on Memory of Gabe, who are the top 2. So big game for eUnited to find a 2-0 here against Flashpoint, and it's quite likely is what a lot of fans will be expecting.
Considering the fact that eUnited is tied at 3rd within Memory of Gabe at 7 points each, this is a huge match for them to make sure that they're trying to get to the top of the gauntlet currently. Flashpoint cannot make it to the Masters lane right now, but they have to be able to battle their way through the gauntlet currently, sitting at the bottom at 8th place. Both of these teams, I'm sorry, only eUnited though, they have 2 more sets to go in week number 6, and the last game for them is going to be against Memory of Gabe, the team that they're tied with.
That's going to be an interesting end to the day as well. Obviously, eUnited versus Flashpoint would be first, following by Luminosity versus Memory of Gabe, a very spicy set. But let's get over to the casters right away with eUnited taking on Flashpoint.
So this matchup right here, Hindu and Tully and Taco to my left, this one's going to be very important if you're a fan of or if you're on eUnited. I think this is we talk a lot about statement games and test matches. Flashpoint is on the bottom of North America, and eUnited have found a couple of curious splits. eUnited have to 2-0 if they really want to be in this top 4 like they are right now.
The interesting aspect about Flashpoint, though, is that to me, they kind of resemble a little bit of kind of refined Noble in that they have that potential to be the spoiler. Like, they have the potential to be the spoiler prospect with a lot of these teams, and that if they take a game off of eUnited in this set, then that ultimately puts eUnited in a pretty awkward position, because for LAN or Gauntlet, you really want to try and place yourself as high as possible seeding-wise, and it'll be really difficult for eUnited to do that if they find the split here today.
Absolutely, and like we said, I mean, Flashpoint, the team is no slouch. They certainly have a strong roster, but eUnited, I think, on paper, should come out on top, and really, like I said, this match is going to say if that should actually is in that sentence. Batz, Hou-Yi, and the Morrigan. We're going to see her again today against Bacchus and Poseidon. I find it curious that they select the Morrigan this early in the draft.
You can never really go wrong with a Morrigan selection, though, primarily because that god at the moment is ultimately a flex pick. While
very much so.
She tends to be favored more for the solo or jungle roles. At the same time, you can potentially put her into the mid lane, even do something crazy like try her out in support. So really, that's a god that teams don't have a whole lot of experience up against right now, considering that she just only recently came into competitive play. And she has so much potential to be a comeback factor, as we're all aware, and that's really the big selling point of the Morrigan.
Here's my problem with the Morrigan is that she's very difficult to pilot. Not only do you have that situation with the ultimate where she can play any other character, but she's got 3 abilities of her own, and they're kind of janky. That stealth, that stun, not exactly easy. And so far, for my money, I haven't really seen somebody pilot the Morrigan absolutely really strong just yet. We'll see if the guys on eUnited can handle it. Batz, Morrigan, Hou-Yi, Vulcan, and Amaterasu. Looks like we're going to see the Morrigan in solo, perhaps, where it's Flashpoint, Bacchus, Poseidon, Awilix, Herc, and Anhur. How you feeling about these 2 drafts?
I'm really going to be keeping my eyes on Mirage this game, running that Awilix in the jungle, because you've got the Bacchus setup, Hercules, even Anhur has the potential knockup for your ultimate. And on top of that, there are already 2 leaps on the side of eUnited. So really, that's kind of just prime pickings for an Awilix. And the combination as well between Awilix's Feather Step and the Poseidon Whirlpool is excellent early laning clear. So we've seen Flashpoint play aggressively early on in previous sets. I would really like to see them once again traverse into the jungle and look for those invades, because I feel as though that aggression is more suited towards their playstyle, and it's what really permits them to snowball ahead of other teams.
Well, right now we have the jungler starting on the solo side, but Bacchus will be joining up with Incon, so we'll see some of that pressure come out. We'll see how well that one works out. Veriziel's actually going to start next to his Hunter. Interesting jungle start here, starting out in the duo lane.
Viriziel's mindset is probably to try and better secure the enemy team's dual lane buffs, because if they're securing purple or red buff even, he's probably going to be losing his buffs regardless of whether or not he started in mid or solo lane, since he's going to be outcleared by this Awilix and Hercules, or Awilix and Poseidon. So ultimately, I think that's a pretty fair play to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, but you're also helping out the situation. It's XenoTronics on the Anhur versus PandaCat's Yi. And while these two will match up in clear a little bit later, right now the Impale certainly wins out. So you definitely want to help out PandaCat a little bit, who already starting the zone battle, which it's interesting. XenoTronics can totally just fight into this, but he's afraid. The reason he's allowing PandaCat to sort of zone him is because of the threat of Viriziel coming back into the lane.
Fair threat to keep in mind as well, especially considering that Xeno was left alone in that lane since the start, as PainDeViande on Amaterasu is opting for a more aggressive route, trying to help his team with the clearing in mid lane.
Which I think he has to. Amaterasu doesn't really offer the traditional peel, although I absolutely love her in support, depending on the rest of the composition. I need to see the peel elsewhere. And right now, with the Morrigan in solo and the Hunbats in the jungle, I'm half and half. I don't love it right now. I think that eUnited still do lack a little bit of that traditional peel that you get out of a Guardian or even most warrior supports by sticking Amaterasu there in the support role, but it's not like they don't have any, so.
The way that I see it is Benji really has two pretty solid options, even three potentially if you take a look at the enemy team as well, considering Morrigan does have that option. You could potentially have an additional Amaterasu or an additional Hunbats ult. You can never really go wrong with either of those ults, as they provide a decent bit of AoE and stuns, and then you got Batz with the CC due to his ultimate. But you could also have Bacchus as well. If peel is your concern, I mean, Morrigan can provide that.
Sure. You know, it's on that ultimate timer cooldown. So like I said, and it's really up to Benji how well he's going to pilot this. Does he choose the right selection? You know, is he able to really make this stuff work? And don't forget, Benji does have a melee range stun on the character herself anyway. So that's why I said I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I got to see how the game really plays out to really see what happens there. Flashpoint, if you're curious, they didn't hit the Gold Fury. They just picked up the Oracles. Cute play by PandaCat. Not gonna hit Xeno, despite taking forever to line that one up, but still, good job, good effort.
I'm expecting Xeno to, at around levels 7 through 9, really start utilizing his pillar more on Anhur as a reflecting barrier for PandaCat, and that not permitting him to clear the lane so easily and just tossing up that pillar so that the ricochets bounce off of that pillar, because not only would that prevent PandaCat from getting a little bit of cute bounce poke onto him, but I mean, if a lane isn't cleared and hunters are boxing at it, that 300, 400, 500 damage from archers and melee minions eventually stacks up, and you could find yourself losing that trade.
Yeah, it's certainly something to keep an eye on. That's why we're seeing, you know, Mark of the Vanguard be so popular, because of things like that. Shouts to the Morrigan's build here. Benji picking up Mark of the Vanguard nice and early as a starting item. We usually see this item almost third, fourth item, usually as a bridge item, but, you know, pick it out in the starting role. You see that a lot of times from the Guardians out there. Viriziel forced to drop the Fear No Evil just to protect his own speed buff. Mirage and friends came through to try, and I emphasize the word try, to steal it away. But Viriziel, I think, intelligently dropped that ultimate. I like that play right there. The chase on the Shadowq, I like it a little bit less.
And immediately, Shadowq looking for the engage, but PainDeViande going to be in a lot of trouble, and Mirage will take the first blood.
Yeah, the beautiful play coming out from Flashpoint. They were ejecting. They wanted no part of that fight, and eUnited just forced it. Flashpoint wanted to leave, and then everybody it's one person just chasing it. Flashpoint says, look, I mean, if you really want to force this fight, I guess we'll take first blood. And right away, Mirage starts off. This character is not one that you want to give an early lead to. Mirage, big poke coming out on top of him right there for PandaCat.
The triple ricochet bounce just sneaking in there, and PandaCat forced to expend his beads there, but the ultimate raining down as well onto the Shadowq, and he could be in a lot of trouble with the ultimate off the mark.
And that's going to be PainDeViande's kill. Big damage coming out from Khaos right there. The ultimate alone winds up being about 500 damage. He didn't hit anybody beforehand, so that ultimate is pretty much all of his contribution on the player damage charts. Now 1-1, teams nice and even.
Mirage would have happily kept walking straight at PandaCat, looking for the feather step or a 3 just to secure the kill. But as soon as that bounce ricochet backed off into him, I mean, there's just no way to really pursue that when you're poked out to 10% health.
Too much of a threat. Just too much of a threat. Mirage right now, he'll have to lick his wounds and come back to the fight at the moment. And right now, things are looking pretty all right for both teams. If I'm eUnited, I'm content with the pace of the game right now. Could even slow down even more so. Why not? PainDeViande and Verizial are characters that I want to see happen a little bit later. And Flashpoint right here, just going to start up the Gold Fury. No vision, no players around. I mean, that's that, folks. Flashpoint take themselves off to a fantastic lead. 1,500 or just about. Just quick Gold Fury.
And it's really easy for Flashpoint to play this a little bit more passive, considering that they did expend 2 ultimates to secure that Gold Fury. And I like that play by Flashpoint primarily because it's so early on in the game at the moment, and the buffs have already been cleared on their side of the map, so they're not really risking a whole lot by expending those ultimates for fast clear onto that Gold Fury.
Right, and then worst case scenario, eUnited actually shows up. They just go back to the lane and farm. It's not that big a deal, right? And these are maybe not 9 times out of 10, but let's say 7 times out of 10, we see that Gold Fury started and then just leashed because somebody walks by it. And you say, all right, our bad. Well, we won't do it again. The Flashpoint, that wasn't some genius call. They just, I feel like a lot of teams make this call. It's just usually stopped. eUnited just didn't have the vision or the rotations coming through on the regular pathing, so didn't actually catch Flashpoint in trouble.
And unfortunately for PandaCat, the ricochet is going to be a little bit off the mark from XenoTronics. Xeno could have been in a lot of trouble there had that connected, considering that he was marked, and the stun follow-up could have been devastating with the ultimate of Hu Yi, but sometimes it's a swing and a miss.
Yeah, I mean, you can't hit everything. Here's the question I posed to you, Taco. Earlier you said that Flashpoint playing this slower paced game is kind of all right. And, I'm just looking here across the way, and if I'm just looking at both of these drafts in a vacuum, eUnited's is the more late game oriented one between the Vulcan and the Amaterasu. Even the Morrigan, I think, kind of lends herself more to the late game than the early game. Whereas Incon and the Poseidon, he kind of reaches a ceiling.
And XenoTronics should be pretty careful here. I don't think that he suspects Verizial in the slightest to be hanging around, but Verizial just going to show himself anyway, wants to pick up a little bit of farm. And like you were mentioning about the drafts, I can kind of agree with you in that eUnited's draft probably favors the late game more, considering that they have the Batz and Vulcan, but Flashpoint's draft is probably the safer draft as far as securing an easier teamfight victory is concerned, because they have so much setup potential provided for their carries, and this should be more so free reign for Incon and Mirage to really shine at this stage when you're drafting so heavily around their picks.
So it's less about just the way that these characters work individually and who's a late, mid to early game god, and more about the ease of execution on these team fights coming out. When you look at what Flashpoint brings, I mean, you drop a Whirlpool, Mirage does Awilix things, and then you're cracking somebody. Ooh, Benji pops the beads after he gets knocked up. And that's cue for Aquarius to throw the boulder. 101 for the solo lane. Not quite a solo kill, as Shadowq's there, but Benji falls down to the wayside. Rough stuff.
And losing his beads at the same time is probably the worst part. Just a little bit too late with that Bacchus flop, and so falling down is just not really much of a response for him to make.
Not quite. Well, it seems the bead's not on cooldown. We'll have to take a look at that one. Very interesting situation right there for eUnited solo laner. Either way, Flashpoint at the moment lead the kills. 2-1 after that gank on the solo side. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that one and see where Benji's going to be able to bounce back. Right now, as a new character, we'll cover what this character does. So the 2, that's pretty much your line attack. Just going to toss it down the lane and clear the wave. That first ability, though, that's that stun. It's kind of weird. It has a delayed deployment. Once you hit it, you got to wait, and then you can stun somebody.
The issue that Benji's really having in this lane is that he's having to play against an early aggressive solo laner such as Hercules, and for a Morrigan early on, she doesn't really have the safest clear, considering that her abilities are a little bit more based around getting closer to the wave. So in order to do that, you've got to come within driving strike range of that Hercules. And so Aquarius has really been utilizing this pick to the best of his ability by just ensuring to apply pressure at all times onto Benji and not really permit him any sort of chance to farm up as easily as he would probably want to in order to try and be a bigger factor in team fights.
One of the nice things that Aquarius does have going for him is the fact that his jungler is falling down. That's not one of the nice things, to be honest with you, but for Israel and squad, just, I mean, they squad up, they ult, and they just destroy Mirage, making sure that he can't feel safe in his own jungle is a big part of what we've seen in Season 4.
And in that instance, I really like the ultimate there by Khaos, because just in case Israel wasn't able to secure that kill, for Khaos to be on mark with the Vulcan ultimate, I mean, it's just always nice seeing that your mid laner has the follow-up and is willing to back you up on your engagements.
Well, I mean, everybody loves Khaos's Giannis and Zhang Kui, but Vulcan really was one of the first gods that Khaos pulled out when you're looking at old, what used to be enemy esports, when Khaos was just as much of a, I won't say a no-name, but an under-known player, an under-celebrated player like the Benji and Vedium that started on that roster and wound up being number 2 at Worlds. Now here in Season 4, Khaos is here for round 2 of eUnited, but, you know, Vulcan was one of the characters that the young man found himself putting himself on the map with, so absolutely not surprised there to see the accuracy coming out from the Vulcan, and kind of nice to see the throwback picks, honestly.
I'm also expecting a little bit more objective fights based on eUnited's draft, because when you do have a Vulcan, that is such strong objective burn and secure that you might as well try and pressure out as much as possible, because you're going to have a ton of follow-up.
So you usually have this conversation, the Vulcan, you know, versus, let's say, a character that doesn't have as much burst. PainDeViande is bursting with a big old Kraken. Nice pull, but it's the counter initiation that I'm worried about. Over the wall goes Verizial. Big meditation. Incon still alive. And now the monkey's in trouble. Mirage gets the kill. The counter initiation winds up proving fruitful. Big time meditation out of Shadowq, saving his mid laner and setting him up for a kill.
I can't believe Incon's health just barely squeaked out of range for that. I really want to know what his HP was like before Shadowq pulled out that meditation, but overall, just excellent body blocks as well by the rest of his team to ensure that Verizial just had no chance to try and sneak in there.
That's the play right there, and you know, you gotta tip your hat to the reaction time of Shadowq. If he's 0.1 second later there, Verizial is winding up with a kill, and honestly can probably jump his way out of that situation. But just fantastic play by Shadowq, some of the smaller plays. Going back to our conversation about objective secure, usually you're talking about the Vulcan against characters that don't have as strong objective secure, but the Vulcan ultimate versus the Kraken, which one winds up winning in that situation? Is it just he who fires first?
Typically, it just comes down to timing if it's a pure Kraken versus Vulcan scenario, but you don't really want to be expending either of those ultimates in an objective securing situation, and if anything, it would probably favor the Vulcan ultimate just because it has much wider AoE. So not only are you zoning from the objective, but if the enemy team does try to opt for stealing, there's a very strong likelihood you're going to take out 1 or 2 members, if not, you know, it could potentially be an entire team, but also the health. If your health goes down low enough, you can expect that there will be a chase pursuing.
That's the key right there for me, is it's the fight afterwards, right? Maybe the enemy does get the objective, right? But if I'm going to Kraken for the steal, it's just that middle that's going to really hurt, and everybody on the outskirts kind of just shrugs it off. Whereas a Vulcan ultimate, wherever you are, you're kind of feeling the pain. Verizial trying to deal it out, but instead knock up and pull. Beautiful play by Mirage over the Shadowq assist, but it's not going to be enough. Mirage gets controlled. Benji with the second ultimate out of the hood. Batz, beautiful Morrigan play. That's going to net him a kill, but XenoTronics in the jungle takes out the OG monkey himself. Incon pops Aegis and exits stage north, where Shadowq takes out Khaos by himself. Benji still here. Snipes out Incon with the close range shotgun, and that's going to be Benji walking away. Can Shadowq clean him up?
Shadowq's trying so hard right now to avenge Incon, but it looks like Benji's just going to get out of range of the Bacchus flop, and unfortunately, Incon is going to fall without any sort of retaliation.
Now, first of all, if y'all gonna complain about me saying he snipes him with the shotgun, you didn't play enough Modern Warfare 2, all right? Those 1778s, absolutely too strong. But either way, Benji, that was a fantastic usage of the Morrigan, popping the Fear No Evil in the mid lane to secure the kill. Looking at the cast of characters, I think that's the perfect character to go for.
I mean, you only have a limited amount of time once you pop that Morrigan ultimate, so you might as well expend Batz's kit as soon as possible. And if you're popping the ultimate when you know that the enemy's actives are down, there's just really no escape for them.
That's the key right there, is just then that's why I keep saying that Morrigan is difficult to pilot, because when it comes down to it, yeah, I mean, you can press 2 and shoot a magic missile, right? It's not that difficult. You can disappear and go invisible. Maybe we could talk about the stun, but it's really the quick decision making that you're forced to do. I'm in a team fight, I'm crossing mid lane, this guy has 10% HP. Not only do I have to decide which character to switch to, I have to take into account, are his relics up, and once I switch into a character, how am I going to utilize these abilities?
I'm certain we can probably expect Benji to really be taking full advantage of an additional Batz ultimate for his team. And a lot of the times that we've seen Morrigan be pulled out, we've noticed that there have been junglers with a more heavy CC-oriented ultimate. And there goes Veriziel again, Khaos with the follow-up. It will be good, and Mirage is going to fall.
Veriziel gets credit for the kill off the assist to the mid lane. Incon very low, pops the Kraken, and is the chase going to be on? Khaos thinks about it, but decides not to. Backfires his way to safety, whereas PainDeViande and Veriziel head into the enemy jungle. They're going to do their worst to try to steal, but it's going to go the way of the other team, so not a good look right there. But either way, 5-5, read the kills. Flashpoint and eUnited tied here, basically tied in the gold as well. eUnited looking to change that up. Meditation comes out. There's the ultimate from Hou-Yi. Gold Fury goes the way of eUnited, and they sneak ahead by just about 1,000 gold.
Excellent use of the Hou-Yi ultimate there. You could probably anticipate that the Anhur steal potential was going to come through with that Desert Fury. So for PandaCat to just drop his ultimate really deters it really just deters the enemy team from trying to pursue them any further into that jungle fight after they secure the gold. And the safely disengaging is really the primary aspect after securing a gold Fury.
Game pause right now as our players try to get themselves situated. And again, like you were talking, we had this conversation not even 10 minutes ago about how it's not always about the gold Fury, but the ensuing moments after the fact. Like you said, can you eject out of there? No problem. Will you be followed up on? How many players do you lose, if any? And right here, eUnited look really strong. And again, this is, I keep thinking vintage enemy, vintage eUnited. We'll get back in the game as we talk about it. Salt Machine, as he was once known, Benji rejoins the eUnited squad. When this team first started, Enemy Esports was their title, and it was PainDeViande and 4 nobodies. One of those nobodies was Khaos, one of those nobodies was Benji, and we fast forward a couple of years and these guys are anything but nobodies. Now, Benji comes back to the squad. Khaos is sticking around. PandaCat has pretty much earned his spot here. You know, this is definitely PandaCat's team as much as anybody's. And Veriziel has even picked it up. eUnited are looking more and more like the enemy that wound up #2 at Worlds, and less like the enemy that lost for months in a row.
Well, one aspect that really helped establish eUnited when they were enemy back in the day is their objective and shot calling overall, which is absolutely superb. PainDeViande, they call him the general for a reason, and it's because he ultimately led his team to so many victories with just unexpected shot calling onto objectives that a lot of teams just weren't accustomed to at the time, and they were unfamiliar with. We saw a slight decline in that once the team started lacking a little bit of synergy, considering that they weren't having as much time together to play as one unit and really be able to bounce off of each other as well as they would like to. And speaking of bounces, PandaCat not securing a bounce off Xeno there, but still taking a decent portion of his health.
Yeah, they got really fragmented. PainDeViande going to join the fight, but really just annoys XenoTronics, who immediately pummels him against the wall. Nice try by PandaCat, but not going to find a home in Xeno's face. But yeah, I mean, the team got just destroyed. Apparently, Incon not here for the conversation. Khaos with 2. Backfire doing the dirty work right here. The level 16 Vulcan. That's the scary part, is that everybody knows about the Vulcan ultimate, and the turret's kind of annoying, but it's easy to forget just how hard that backfire winds up smacking you.
The best part about that is that was, again, Benji on the bots, and it looks like Xeno could be in a lot of trouble here, forced to pop both of his ultimates. PainDeViande trying to give chase, but it looks like Xeno's going to get underneath that T2 just in time. Pain, though, could be an entirely different story. He's moving a little bit slow through that T1 tower.
PandaCat, not going to say he baited his support there, but PandaCat got the mark, jumped in, dropped the ultimate, and ran away. And PainDeViande, on the other hand, said, "Word, I see you, buddy," and just goes in. And the thing with that Amaterasu ultimate, when you're in it, you're just in it. PainDeViande hits the first shot, sees his hunter walk away, and goes, "Well, I'm here for the whole ride, baby, no matter what happens." Pain winds up being a little bit safe there, but eUnited, yeah, certainly a little bit more cohesive at this moment than we've seen in the past, and you know, it's a good thing. I like watching this squad be successful. Pain is kind of a likable guy. There was a moment where he was kind of the bad guy of the SPL, but then he comes on an interview, and you kind of really can't just really like the guy. And I think the same could be said about the rest of the roster as well.
Shadowq being poked out so low here and needing it back is really going to open the doorway for eUnited to try and pressure this T1
what
tower.
A perfect play. Just beautiful. That is the promising moment. If you're sitting here and you're an armchair coach, that right there is when you say, all right, eUnited are working together a little bit better. The meatball play, there's no call there. There's not a, we're going to go on Mirage if I hit this. That's just Khaos tossing out a meatball, and as soon as Mirage gets picked up, the collapse of all three members, everybody's on the same page. You can watch a lot of teams that's just a little bit of poke. For eUnited and teams that are on the same level, when we talk about synergy, that's the moment that it proves it to you, and eUnited find their 8th kill.
Not to mention that eUnited were probably aware that Mirage's beads were still down due to that engagement that they had around the Portal Demon, where Mirage was trying to help Incon get out of danger, but they both ended up just getting deleted for it.
Wonderful stuff. That, like I said, that's the stuff I like to watch. Good team Smite, and that's the stuff that makes me excited. Watching PandaCat get that kill on Xeno with help from Pain, sure, that's all well and good. And we can hear you taunting, Panda. We can hear you taunting, Panda.
Pain's got to respect that 1v1 now. After the spam laugh comes out in the 2v1, you gotta give respect to the 1v1 and just let it happen. See?
Where's the honor? Where's the honor? Nah, jokes aside, as I say all the time, ain't no such thing as a 1v1 in the SPL.
Never.
If you are getting a 1v1 out of the solo lane, I guess the hunter lane you can talk about now since it's kind of the solo lane. If you're getting that 1v1, you're just playing it wrong. Shadowq. A combat Carl. It's going to take a while, but this is inevitably a death. And again, this is just by design coming out from eUnited. Lined up in that jungle, just set up an ambush here. Nice cracking over the wall coming out from Incon, but the ensuing team fight, not so sure about this one. Big play out of Aquarius with the flip, but I don't know if Flashpoint want eUnited that close to them. Mirage falls down. Aquarius could be next, but he does have the tools to survive if he plays his cards right. PainDeViande, make sure he folds. XenoTronics shows up a little bit too late, and the Tier 1 tower goes down.
XenoTronics has absolutely no way to try and contest into the members of eUnited, and unfortunately for Mirage, the last person you want to pull into your team is the support Amaterasu. Khaos popping the ultimate, a little bit of a zoning factor as it doesn't connect with the rest of Flashpoint's remaining members, but looks like eUnited are going to secure that T2 tower and probably make a play for the Gold Fury now.
You know, the old joke about the zoning ultimates, these two mid-mages are the ones that I'm actually okay with having zoning ultimates, especially Vulcan. I don't know why I'm more okay with Vulcan ultimates being off the mark than I am with Krakens, but a lot of times what happens is Vulcan will ult behind the players, forcing the enemy to run towards him, and then they're in the enemy exactly where you wanted them. So I'm down with that one.
Or maybe that's just what they want you to believe. Because I know that whenever I miss abilities, I say that it's zoning as well.
Oh, of course.
And I mean, as a streamer, you're always correct and you're never wrong. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Everybody on your team is usually the one making all the incorrect plays, and you're flawless.
Of course.
Beyonce style.
Yeah, I mean, that's just how it works. Right now, 24 minutes in, that's how eUnited is hoping it works. They've got a smooth, quiet 10,000 gold lead. It hasn't been, a lot of times when we see 10K gold leads, it's domination. Flashpoint has had their moments and has had their wins, but really eUnited has just amassed this lead. Shadowq right now very low. It's Mirage that gets the first kill, but Panda takes out the support. Not done yet. Panda still pummeling against the support, the solo lane Hercules, excuse me. There's a nice little shot out of Khaos, and Incon's gonna fall down here again. In the hand of PandaCat. PainDeViande gets one for himself. Aquarius is on the bad side of that. Meanwhile, XenoTronics, the only one alive. It's because he wasn't there. Homie's pushing out the left side, a tier 2 tower. That'll actually be a pretty nice win for him and his team. However, the enemy will do the same. So it's an even trade right now. The Phoenix is going to be the next target for eUnited. XenoTronics being prevented from doing the same by Benji.
That team fight just occurred so fast that Xeno already in the dual lane, and it looks like he wants to take up the trade with Benji. Not sure that that's the smartest engagement to make, and now halfway poked out already. Benji might just have his way with Xeno here.
Yeah, right here, XenoTronics is having some trouble, able to pop out the ultimate to deal back some damage to Benji, but just a quick look at the man's build. You can see the Breastplate of Valor, the Winged Wand, and the Spirit Robe all going to help provide damage reduction against what XenoTronics brings. And honestly, Benji is going to let that one go. Well, he's not going to let that one go.
He might not let that one go. He's waiting for Xeno to
Did he transform
feel
into
as
a
though
Awilix
he's
to
safe.
run faster? Oh no, okay. I still can't get him. Benji right now winds up empty-handed. Xeno gonna pop him with the pillar. This has been a fun grudge match.
But
to
here's
watch.
the issue, is that the entire time that this is going down, eUnited are securing that Portal Demon, and now with the Portal Demon online for eUnited, this could very well be a Fire Giant attempt coming out soon on the side of eUnited.
And that's Benji's job as a solo laner. You see that a lot. These, you know, the chases, the Benny Hill, the Benji Hill music. I mean, honestly, you're just there to waste time. Zoning, wasting time, it all falls down in the same spot. Fire Giant, despite the best efforts of Aquarius, goes to eUnited. A little bit of a chase. Left side, right side, left side. Verizio cleans up Xeno. Right side, everybody hiding underneath the tier 2 tower. We've got 2 in the mid lane, 3 on the right lane. And the shift over from both PandaCat and the jungler will be successful. Will they be able to catch Flashpoint here with the flank? That's the story. Verizio can't find one with the monkey, but still has a couple of tools up his sleeve, none of which include the ultimate. Tier 2 tower relinquished by Flashpoint. And that'll be 1,500 in the pocket.
And these objectives are just getting absolutely shredded right now by eUnited. So much penetration coming out for that team due to the Humbats and the Hui. It's just, that damage is pretty nuts.
Yeah, it's just a little bit too much. Nice jump in from Shadowq, bringing PainDeViande to the backside. There's an ultimate out of the mid lane. Vulcan. Not enough damage. Ho Yi Sun's raining on the backside, and Khaos still doing it from the back line. The man can't be stopped. Vulcan bringing the damage. Right and mid lane Phoenix down thanks to the best efforts of eUnited. Aquarius down thanks to PandaCat. No deaths for the Hunter.
Two Phoenixes down, 3 members have fallen on the side of Flashpoint, and it looks like the Titan will be next as another Humbat's ultimate popped into the fountain. They really want Incon. Wow, Panda, you just gotta let the mans breathe a little bit.
Yeah, he's gonna be able to get out of that one. 20-6 as the game takes to an end. Fantastic stuff out of eUnited, and that right there, that's what I was talking about. Listen, this team, they have won some games against the good guys. They've lost some games against the not so good guys. And here, Flashpoint, they're at the bottom. This is a match that absolutely eUnited has to say, we've been unpredictable. Now we're predictable. You can predict a win, and that's the statement you set, the way they played game 1.
And really, I think that Benji has probably had the best debut of Morrigan so
Absolutely.
far from what we've seen out of this guy whenever she's been tried to implement it into these drafts. And he was ensuring every single time that he was popping the bot's ultimate pretty much. And when you have that kind of CC on the side of your team, it just becomes a little bit overwhelming. And that's essentially what we saw happen to Flashpoint, in that they just had no response really to the double bots ultimates. And unfortunately for Mirage, anytime that he was able to pop off his ultimate with his teammate's setup, he was pulling in a Amaterasu, and that's probably the last thing you want to see flying into your back line is an AMA support.